I'm finding that many Americans don't know about one of the greatest strokes of genius the US has ever implemented, a life changing, long lasting gift to the world. It literally changed the world. And it guaranteed that the United States would be and remain the undisputed world power and world leader. Apparently, this is not taught in American schools, and I can't figure out why. This classically American stroke of genius is the Bretton Woods Agreement. Not the most inspiring name for the changes it brought or the position it put the US in. It's named after Bretton Woods, New Jersey, where the meetings were held. At the end of World War II, the US was the only industrialized country in the world. Germany was bombed out, Russia was bombed out, all of Europe was bombed pretty much into oblivion, as was Japan and every other industrialized country. But America, it was still making aircraft carriers. In fact, the last carrier made in World War II was September 10th, 1945, in the United States, just days after World War II ended. It's now moored in San Diego Harbor, which is where I'm currently working from as a museum ship. So, really, think about this. The US is building aircraft carriers and planes and tanks and whatever else, but the biggest industrial items a country can make. Well, the rest of the world is struggling to repair a few possibly functional factories. This put the US in a very, very powerful position. So, what did American leaders do with this newfound power? They did not take over Europe and make it the United States of Europe, nor did they finish off the Soviet Union and make it the United States of Central Asia. They didn't occupy China as the United States of China or anything remotely like that. American leaders of that time understood that taking territory is costly in lives and resources. And if taking over those countries is relatively easy, it still is costly. And it's much more difficult to occupy and control a territory after it's conquered. What America did was brilliant. And you and I, and pretty much every other person on earth, is better off because of it. Rather than taking territory, America tied the world's nations together through trade and made the US dollar the currency the world trades in. This is why the US dollar is king everywhere, and America is the richest nation on earth. Think about it. How many nations use the Russian ruble? One, Russia. The Chinese yuan? One, China. The Russian rupee? One, India. The US dollar? 24. 24 nations use the US dollar as their currency, officially or unofficially. At 25, actually, if you include the US. But it's more powerful than that. The US dollar is the world's reserve currency. Nations typically trade in US dollars. When, say, Japan and Brazil trade, they don't sell in Japanese yen and buy in Brazilian real. They typically trade in US dollars. International commodity markets like oil, metals, agricultural products, they're priced in US dollars. Thank you, Bretton Woods. The Bretton Woods Agreement set this up. It's why America is so rich and powerful. So, this is how America conquered the world. It's significantly easier and less costly, and no one dies, to trade with a country when you want something rather than invade it. The US accumulated so much power through the Bretton Woods Agreement and the agreements that followed that not trading with the US would kill your economy. The Bretton Woods Agreement set up what would become the World Trade Organization, the World Bank, and the IMF, and many other international organizations that manage global trade and finance. For decades, this worked, and it still works. It works better than any other system before it or anything proposed since. As economically, diplomatically, or militarily powerful any other nation becomes, for better or worse, it cannot outcompete the US because the deck is stacked in favor of America. In fact, the game was designed and the rules set up by the US so that the US would always win. It's in your favor by a long shot to play America's game, even if you don't like it. And speaking of the military, the global economy that the US designed at Bretton Woods made the US extraordinarily rich, and much of that wealth was spent and is spent on the military. And it needs to be, because it's the American military that keeps the sea lanes open and free for trade. It keeps rogue nations from invading other nations and disrupting trade, and a host of other functions to keep trade free and flowing. It's in America's best interest as well as all other players. The US is the superpower, and even when there was one other superpower, that was the Soviet Union, the Soviet Union was light years behind the US. America will keep this power position for the foreseeable future, and that's by design. So, my question is, why change the design? Why give away all this power? Power that's kept major wars from breaking out, power that's moved millions out of poverty, moved millions into middle class, power that's turned enemies into friends. This list goes on and on. The power that the United States wields and the way it's used it has made the world better. So why are Republicans in the US under Trump giving American power to Russia and China? Just giving it away. Yes, China might run the international system better than the US, but Russia? Come on. No one wants to live under Russian rule, not even the Russians. Can someone explain why Trump is pulling the US out of the international system, the Bretton Woods Agreement that it set up? Why is Trump making America a has been nation and setting up Russia to be the world power?